This afternoon I'm in conversation with Medina. Medina is the founder of Living Boldly. So I'm very excited to chat with her today. Welcome, Medina.
Thank you, Lou. I am excited to be having conversations with you.
So I'm really taken with your story. You started or you arrived in South Africa as a young girl at the age of 18, right?
A little older than 18.
Okay. And you built an amazing life in South Africa. Left your parents behind, young, newly married, am I correct?
Correct. Newly married with a little girl,
Oh.
2 years old. I came to with her. So I would say I was just past 21, going on 22 or so.
Oh, okay. I thought you were much younger when you arrived in South Africa. Okay, so let's start there. You arrived in South Africa and then what?
Well, arrived in South Africa and just the challenges of a new country, the challenges of new people, the challenges of new systems, and just having to do life. You know, being a young married couple, we needed to find the right jobs, we needed to get Cherise into a school. I was then faced with the whole apartheid regime, which was something that I really didn't understand. I did not have the skill sets that anybody needs, you know, to sort of be in a job that I aspired to. And when I say aspired to, I wasn't really sure of what I actually aspired to. I just knew I needed a job and I needed something that was cool and something that was trendy.
So let's pause there for a minute, okay? Because many people believe that they have to have completed schooling, they have to have a tertiary education to make something of themselves. You say that you arrived in South Africa, no skills and experience. You completed your matric, your grade 12, right?
Well, yes, in Zimbabwe it's known as your O-level because
Okay.
it's a different syllabus,
Right.
you know, but I stand to be corrected, but I think an O-level is very close to or similar to your matric.
Okay.
But no, I didn't get through. I wrote it, but I didn't get through that either.
Oh, okay. So no skills, very little education or no tertiary education, and you began to build an amazing life for yourself. So tell us, where did it all start?
I think it starts from passion. It starts from being passionate, being hungry, and I think fear. Fear drives a lot. You know, fear can drive you in a positive way, fear can drive you in a negative way. And I think a lot of it was fear because I had a little girl and I had to provide for her. And the expectation, you know, the expectation is huge from family, from friends, there's peer pressure, there's all kind of pressure. And I think it just started with me going from one job to another job and just pushing my way through, being resilient in the sense that even if I didn't know how, I would want to learn how.
Okay, so there's the willingness to learn.
Correct.
Okay, so you moved from one job to the next, you learned, you grew.
And that's all I actually did, is I kept learning and I kept growing. And I kept putting myself in spaces where opportunity presented itself. And as long as the opportunity presented itself, I was not going to give it up.
So when you were working in corporate, you were working for companies. To what level did you rise within that particular organization or any organization before stepping out and starting your own business?
Okay, so I came to South Africa in 1989. I started my own business in 2000. But in that time, I was in so many different spaces. I worked in the medical field, I worked in the mining industry, and I landed at an ad agency ultimately. And I think that's where, if you look at the diversity of spaces I was in, the skill sets that I developed, you know, from the admin side to the creative side to just production and everything else. I was then in a position when a further opportunity presented itself to step out, because I also would not conform. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but there's times where you need to conform and there's times where you need to stand for yourself.
No, but that is just your journey. So you learned by working for various organizations, you rose within the ranks, you got to an ad agency, you learned that piece of work, and then you stepped out and you started a marketing company.
Yes, well, there was a gentleman that popped in to present a music campaign. And that's how I found myself with Music Marketing International, whereby he was presenting music for one of the clients where sponsorship was required and big artists were going to come into the country. And I presented that, but it was like, when nobody hears you, when nobody's really interested, and you say, I just would not take no for an answer. No was something it was unacceptable. And that's how I stepped out to join Lloyd.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Trying to understand the music space. It was a huge learning curve for you.
I think the learning for me was more the life skill of being on the outside, because I think I came from a very sort of secluded, tunnel visioned, always being protected kind of space. So I was in the space where I was only doing admin, moving from A, moving to B, just traveling within a short circle, a short space, but stepping out, because at the time, if you think Vodacom, they sponsored a lot of sport, and a lot of the brands needed to build their brands, so they would ride off the credibility of something that was extremely credible. Give you an example, all the rugby, all the soccer games, that kind of stuff, they sponsored that, but nobody really saw the depth of where music could take you, because music crosses all genres, all colors, all nations. It's just something that brings so much joy. There's an intensity to music. You listen to music and it takes you back. It brings tears, it brings laughter, it brings so much. And the thought of a big brand sponsoring music wasn't very common at that time. But when you looked at different artists that were extremely credible, and you looked at a brand that you were trying to get across all nations and all colors and everybody else, it worked.
Okay.
And that's what I stepped into. So I had already understood a little bit of marketing. I understood a bit of advertising. I understood sponsorship. So all the tools were there to step out and now go into the big wide world and travel across the oceans to get bigger artists.
So when you started with music campaigns, were you employed by a company, or you had started your own business at the time?
That's when I moved out of the ad agency and I partnered with the business partner that I partnered with to start Music Marketing International.
Okay.
So I was a partner to the business, but I had good relationships with the clients coming from the ad agency.
Okay.
So there was already a trust factor. People have to trust you to work with you or to invest their brand with you.
So the first business that you started with a business partner was Music International?
Music Marketing International.
Music Marketing International.
Yes, MMI.
Okay. And then from there you went
and then Lloyd, we established that. We established MMI together. It really was his idea. I was brought on board. And I must say, I learned so much from him at the time, because he was very streetwise as opposed to me. I always refer to myself as this girl from Bulawayo who didn't know too much but was willing to learn. And I learned so much from him, and that's where I got the opportunity to actually travel abroad.
Okay. So you learned from MMI. When did you then step into
Dandelion
Breeze?
Dandelion Breeze was, so MMI was from about 2000 through to, I would say, maybe 2006 or so, but I ran them parallel. So I had already registered Dandelion Breeze, because you can't just pick up.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to run parallel, and when you see something is grown, it's like a newborn baby.
Right.
You nurture till it's strong enough to stand on its own 2 feet. And if you think about it, the heart and brains initially behind MMI was my business partner. I came on board with his idea and ran with his idea and grew from it. But in the investing in it, I added huge value because we all come with different strengths. To the point where that ran its course. And people are different and values change.
Right.
And that's when that partnership dissolved itself. He went on to continue running it, and I moved on with Dandelion Breeze.
Okay. But then you had the skill, you had the expertise,
Correct.
you had the confidence,
Yes.
and the ability to then step out into your own business.
Correct. And that's where the opportunities came, where I was invited to international platforms, where I could actually then go and present myself, learn from it, and stand for many others, that didn't have the opportunity to be on the other side.
Right. And Dandelion Breeze is a marketing company.
Well, it says marketing and eventing. So it's coming up with marketing concepts for brands and then taking it right through the line. So instead of above the line like the ad agency, above the line where I'm talking at that time was more TV, creating TV ads, creating radio ads, big billboard. I was on the ground. It was more the poster, it was the PR, it was taking an event from conceptualizing it to the actual running of the event.
Okay.
That's what Dandelion Breeze is.
Okay. And you're still busy with.
So I still have Dandelion Breeze. It is not as, what is the right word? It's not as busy as it used to be because life has changed.
Right.
Diversity has kicked in. A lot of people are doing a lot more online, so you even find when it comes to campaigns, people are doing it online. There's no need to actually do live events. But slowly, post-COVID, the live events are starting to pick up again, and this is why the rebranding of Dandelion Breeze is in process so that we can get it back on the road.
So, COVID hit, things came to a standstill. How were you able to navigate and sustain yourself during that particular period, making sure that when we came out of COVID, you were still standing and Dandelion was still standing?
That was by the grace of God, let me tell you. I think that you got to stand and know that God is for you, not against you, because I really do believe that a lot of us were rattled on the inside and we were not sure how. I would be lying if I would say that fear didn't creep in, because my responsibilities are huge. I don't just take care of myself. I believe that some of us are chosen to be leaders and some of us are chosen to be followers. And in saying that, neither one is of more importance, because you need both for this world to survive. And I am just so grateful that in the time of while Dandelion Breeze was doing exceptionally well, I never chose to live beyond what was needed. There's a want and there's a need, and I kept my feet on the ground and I lived off simplicity. Everything was very, very simple. I would be driving past and be at a traffic light, and I would see a young guy with a poster or a little flyer saying property that's off plan. And with the property being off plan, it would say like X amount, a minimal amount, secures. And I would pick up the property flyer and I would invest into it, and a couple of months later, I would apply for a bond, and when we did a big campaign and I did a good job, I would try and pay it off sooner rather than later. And I found myself playing in the property market. Within a couple of years, I had a few properties in my portfolio.
So Dandelion gave you that opportunity. You did exceptionally well on events and marketing, and it allowed you then to move into the property space.
Correct. And I think for me, it's crazy. There's so many different ways of investing, and somehow in my subconscious, I need to feel. I need something tangible. So brick and mortar made sense to me. When people spoke about the stock exchange and people spoke about buying shares and so many different ways of investing your money, retirement annuities, I was just fearful of them. You know, if the eye couldn't see it or I couldn't feel it, and I'm not saying that that was the right thing to do. It could have been absolute naivety, but it worked for me because I needed something tangible. And at quite a young age, I would like to believe I built up a good property portfolio, which then you were asking me how did I survive during COVID.
Right.
I was in a position to sell a few, and blessed enough that there were still buyers, you know, during that phase. And the income that came from that, I could use to sustain my lifestyle. You know, like the Bible will always say, there's famine and there's favor. And I refer to Joseph. You know, how did he operate? You know, you need to store in the storehouse.
Right.
And as life...
And you stored in the form of property.
Correct. That's how I stored, because I would not live beyond. You know, people would ask me the question and say, but you're living in this area, which for me was a very comfortable area. I'm still there today, 21 years later. You know, and others were buying in more upcoming areas that they felt were more prestigious. And yes, and for me that really didn't matter. You know, where I was giving me everything that I needed, so I could build on that.
Right.
And even the property today, I mean, that has been turned into a luxury guest house.
So during COVID, you turned that into a luxury guest house?
Correct,
Right?
but it was just pre-COVID.
Okay.
So when the marketing company, I realized that one of our biggest clients, and that's another big lesson, you don't put all your eggs in one basket, because that goes down and everything goes down with you. And that wasn't the first time I learned, it was actually the second time that has happened to me. And it was, oops, what now? Walked away for a while, put my thinking cap on, and the crazy thing is I actually went to Cape Town. It was meant to be for a weekend. I ended up being there for a number of weeks, where I Ubered into Hermanus, sat in a beautiful guest house, and that's where the penny dropped. That's when I get on my knees and I ask the Lord, where to from here? Beyond me, I don't understand, you tell me. And that's when the idea was born. Well, you're on this beautiful property, children have left, your daughter's married, what do you need all of this for? And part of our growth is letting go.
Right.
Let go of what's not needed. You know, you're at a stage in your life where you need a bigger property, you have children to bring up, you are entertaining, you know, from a marketing perspective, there was always entertaining, but now you have to repurpose and you have to think of, where am I now? And the stage of my life where I was then, just pre-COVID, was, I don't need all of this anymore. So how do I turn it around, and where you have liabilities, turn them into assets, which is exactly what I did.
Okay, so you've given us some beautiful, beautiful nuggets. If we can just pause for a minute. No skills, very little education, but you were still able to build an amazing life.
Right.
You had the willingness to learn and to grow, and to take whatever job you could land at the beginning of your career or your working life.
Yeah.
You took that opportunity, you learned, you grew, eventually getting sufficient skills under your belt.
Correct.
To then step out into a partnership that took you overseas, into the US and to various different countries, and from there you were able then to step out into your very own business, which is Dandelion Breeze.
Yeah.
And even when COVID hit and when things were falling apart, the nest egg or your investment portfolio was then able to carry you through that very, very dark period.
Correct.
Have I summed it up correctly?
Yes, you definitely have. I think just the one thing where a lot of skill, should I say, and skill may or may not be the right word, but my travels, being so blessed to have been on just about every continent, you know, through work opportunities at the time, I learned different cultures, I met different people. So the networking ability, you know, and being open to sow into others' lives and allowing others to sow into your lives, actually, or should I say my life, played a huge role as well. You know, that really contributed. And I think for me, it was never getting to the point of being starstruck. It was getting to the point of understanding who am I, what can I learn from different people, seeing the value in them, not in the name or the brand. You know, I find, I'm not saying that credentials and people don't work hard and shouldn't be applauded for the names that they become, but nobody's an idol. You know, we can learn and grow from each other, and I think that's what helped me usually, was staying authentic to myself, not allowing myself to sort of go crazy or be driven by the name of something else. I think that's very, very important. You know, I was in many instances with many, many famous people, but I engaged, I applauded, I admired for who they were, but I did not worship.
But you didn't lose yourself in that
No.
space. You remain true to who you are, and you continue to be authentic and present Medina in terms of who Medina is.
Correct, Lorraine, correct. And I'm so grateful for that, because we get lost in the brand. And what I've been learning from in my time now doing conscious coaching with Live Life Boldly is that so many people get lost in the brand and are acknowledged and looked up upon because of the brand. Take the brand away. Who are you? You know, so yes, there's a space for everybody, there's a time and a place, but you build a corporate brand, and that's beautiful, but are you building your own brand? And especially if you are in the entrepreneurial field, you know, the small to medium enterprises. Yes, it's great to build off the credibility of big brands, because they are there and they've done exceptionally well and we can learn from them. But let's not forget who we are.
Yes.
Let's also work on building ourselves and building credibility that authentically registers and sits within you.
Okay. So now you've got all this wonderful experience and that life has taught you. You've now stepped into a space, as you said, conscious coaching. You founder of the organization Living Life Boldly. Tell us about that.
Okay, so Live Life Boldly was born by recognizing how many people along the way that I intentionally or unintentionally helped. When you sow into people's lives and you're not afraid to give everything that you've learned, to give your IP away. You know, so many people say it's your intellectual property. You need to hold it, you need to keep it, you know, and I feel indifferently. I feel that the more you give, if it comes from the heart and you've created it, you can create more. So you just give away freely, and it's about paying forward. And I had sowed into so many people's lives. I really believe that it's a calling, it's a gift. You know, a career is one thing, but a gift is when you get so much joy from it and the return is immeasurable. For me, that's a gift. And I found myself doing that amongst so many young influencers, being in the marketing space, being in the music space, you know, in the industry of the arts. I was helping, I was coaching, I was doing it all, and that's why I call it conscious coaching more than anything else. I come into this also without having to have gone to university for it, without having to have sat in exams for it or anything like that. It's just by the experience that I have acquired over the years of the different spaces I've been in. And when I speak of that, I talk from being a bold woman in conjunction with living life boldly. You know, you go through childhood and sitting down and acknowledging and taking ownership of the trauma one has gone through, the challenges one has gone through, you know, and that rate across the board, from fear to rejection to abandonment to abuse to so many different things. The topics are many. And acknowledging all of that, and then going into business and understanding being a female of color in business. What does that come with?
Yes.
You know, then looking at relationships and going through a marriage, you know, being married from 18 years old and having a daughter and a long marriage and then going through a divorce and understanding that, and then going through religious changes of growing up Islamically and then choosing Christianity, you know, and the rejection of that. And life continues, you know, there is so much that one can share, and building a business, being a young entrepreneur in a space of being so open, and with my openness, being awarded major campaigns. The one I forgot to mention was actually partnering with Vodacom Sale and winning the World Cup.
Right.
You know, and moving the entire agency at the time to Polokwane, and for 40 days just working with young artists, you know, in arts and culture, and, you know, being on stage and making
This is the
sure
2010 World Cup.
the 2010 World Cup, and thereafter being asked to come to Brazil. I mean, for me, that can only be the gift and the blessing of a God that's bigger than all of us. Because look at the diversity and look at the number of people that worked on it. How do I get asked to come through? You know, and it's been grateful for that, and always being thankful. Being in Brazil, presenting in Brazil, sharing in Brazil, coming back, I just feel that the experience is so extended and so diverse that I can't sit with it. I've got to share it. I've got to give it
back.
Yes, yes. And that's where I find myself now. So live life boldly is really just showcasing on my experiences how I've had to live life boldly with all its challenges and all its goodness, and saying, how do I share that to many others and be the accountability partner for them to grow and learn from others, you know, and still adapt it to your own life.
But you're basically saying it is possible.
Always, yes.
And
it
you're
is
saying,
possible.
you're saying, if I did it, leaving my country at the age of
21, 22, yes.
with very little education, no real skill or expertise because you didn't have a tertiary education,
Correct.
builds up a career,
Correct.
and today you are now able to give back
And sustain my life.
It's amazing.
A comfortable life.
Yeah.
You know, I must say, if I said it's a fearless life, I'd be lying, because with all that's taking place, and stability is never consistent. You know, you're growing every day. I am so open to learn every day, because I still feel that the older I get, the less I know.
Right.
You know, because there's so much to learn every day, and the young innovation that comes in. I'm like a sponge, you know, I lap it all up, but I'm also willing to give off everything that worked for me. And I feel, you know, like the word says, together.
Yeah.
Together is everything.
Right. And you are still putting your best foot forward?
Yes.
Just the other day you bought an apartment cash?
Yes, I did. I believe in the cash system, Louise, and I know I've always been afraid to speak of it, because I feel there's a fine line, almost like between assertiveness, between arrogance, between boastfulness, and I never want to be perceived as that. It also could be my subconscious belief system, but I'm bold enough now to say I've worked hard, I play hard, and I deserve it, because I've put the effort in. I don't believe in short-term, quick, overnight making money schemes. Believe me, I've burnt.
Right.
I've put a lot into it, forex trading, you name it, and I'm not slating it for a minute.
Right.
I'm not saying that it doesn't work for some.
Right.
It hasn't worked for me. So yes, I've worked very, very hard, and I did just buy a property, and I'll tell you why I bought the property. I bought the property out of fear. I'm strong, and I've overcome fear in many ways, but when I say fear, I'm talking positive fear. Fear out of I am helping so much and giving so much that am I considering what's going to be left for me at a later stage?
Right.
So it's also being smart enough to say, let me take what I still have and continue to invest
it.
correctly so that it's safe.
Right.
You know, and safe, unsafe, is anything safe today?
It's not
Yes.
squandered, and you're not spending it on something frivolous. So you've taken this cash and you put it into an apartment. We both know that property is a great investment. You know, if you sell at the right time, you can make some good profit on it. But
Correct. And as long as it's not, because it's not short term, you know, so if you're putting it in for the long haul, that's a good thing. You get a good rental out of it, which is also good. I must say I've been very blessed because tenants haven't always been the best for many, but I've been very blessed that the tenants we've had have always been good tenants. But that's because also I believe that if you're a property owner, it shouldn't just be about the money. For me, it's never been about the money. So the properties I have, the condition of the property is something that I'm prepared to live in. So I always create them to be beautiful spaces so that you value the tenant that comes in and the tenant values you. And that way you maintain good relationships, and it boils down to simplicity. You do good, you get good. You know, that's what life's about.
Well, Medina, thank you so much for speaking to us today. As I said, you've left us with some beautiful, beautiful nuggets. The one big takeaway for me is that it is possible.
Yes.
It is absolutely possible.
Everything is possible. You just need to have the will, the stamina, the want, and know that there's a God that's bigger than you, that will never forsake you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lubin.
Thank you.